is Jeff Smith. I'm a parent in Missoula. I have 3 children in the Missoula schools. And this is a discussion on a new idea that's come to Missoula. It's actually an old idea, but it's a new idea for Missoula. It's called magnet schools. Tonight we're going to have an hour-long discussion on what a magnet school is and why this idea is ripe for Missoula. This is also a call-in show. So you can not only watch, you can also pick up your telephone and call us and ask questions. If someone has started talking about something that you wanted to know more about, or if someone has not talked about something that you are interested in, please give us a call and you can enter this discussion. This is a community discussion this evening on magnet schools. Welcome. And my guests tonight include Jean Duncan Carey. She is a parent of 3 children who have gone through the Missoula schools. She is a parent of a person who's gone through the Missoula schools and has graduated from college. And she also has a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, is it, or 4th grader? Mm-hmm. Right. And my other guest is Claudia Lawrence. She is a kindergarten teacher, has taught kindergarten for 19 years, 18 years in Missoula. She's also the parent of a sophomore at the University of Montana who went through the Missoula school system. And my 3rd guest is Dolores Cederberg. She taught for 33 years and spent 6 years recently on the board, the Missoula School Board. She has been a Missoula resident since 1987. Is that right? And my final guest is Paul Fieldhouse. He's a smoke jumper with 2 children in the Missoula schools who's been involved in the Missoula Magnet School idea for over a year now.
That's right.
So what is a magnet school?
Well, just to talk generically about what a magnet school is, a magnet school draws like a magnet children from a larger area than just a neighborhood. For instance, in Missoula now specifically, we have boundaries that within those boundaries children go to a specific assigned school. A magnet school would be across those boundaries and would draw children, and there are magnet schools throughout the country. A magnet school then draws children because the children and the parents are interested in the particular thing that's happening at that magnet school. It may be a discipline like science or math or the arts, or in some cases it may be just the particular approach that the teachers take and the instruction is delivered at that particular school.
So this is a special school, a community-wide school rather than a neighborhood school that's restricted by neighborhood boundaries.
Yes, because of particular things that it offers, it draws children from beyond a neighborhood's boundaries throughout the whole district. Yes.
And Dolores, you were saying that this idea is not a new idea, but is one that has come up in many communities throughout the United States.
Yes, my children went to school on Long Island, New York, and my children were in a school similar to that. That was a magnet school that involved team teaching and a lot of planning with teachers, and that's one of the factors. And it was continuous progress. We didn't have formal report cards until after 3rd grade. They were in a continuous progress situation, so I was familiar with this from the 60s.
So a magnet school would step out of the grading and potentially could step out of the grading and report card worksheet kind of schooling?
It could. It would depend upon what the parents choose to have and what the staff chooses to have the magnet school emphasize. The ones we have seen do have continuous progress. The ones that are in Bozeman that we saw have that feature. And I taught in a school that had continuous progress as well.
I see. Okay. Anything else that we need to, as part of the definition of what a magnet school is?
I think there's choice. I think that's important. Normally the parents choose to go to the school, so you have an interest in the parents choosing the school, and then you have the teachers that choose to be in that. And generally you would have an administrator who would choose to be in that school with a special emphasis on sharing ideas and communication, and
So,
that's very important.
So not only the parents and the children would choose to go to the school, but also the teachers within the district would choose to be the teachers there, and you also mentioned the principal or the administrator would also choose to enter this environment as well?
There was an advantage in Bozeman because they said they had the possibility of grant writing if they chose a specific topic, like they did science and technology. Then they were able to engender more money because they were able to write specific grants, which is a possibility that we haven't discussed yet at all.
Well, you've already anticipated the next question, which is where magnet schools are functioning. You mentioned Long Island, New York, and you mentioned magnet school in Bozeman. Let's talk about that a little bit. How did it start? When did it come into existence? What effect it has had on the other schools in the community? What effect it's had on parents and the quality of education in Bozeman? Who wants to talk about that?
Well, the magnet school in Bozeman, this is its 4th year, and we visited last year in its 3rd year, and they're still evolving. Evidently that goes on and on and on. But one of the things that they've discovered with that magnet school, that the creativity and the enthusiasm of the teachers and the students has spread through the whole district, so that there are neighborhood schools now with focuses. So in Bozeman, it's not just the magnet school with a focus, but the neighborhood schools have focuses as well. And there's one with an arts focus, another with an international focus, another that's a bilingual, and another one which is a Native American focus. So it has enriched the whole district to have the magnet school kind of inspire that kind of education or that kind of approach, so that now there's choice in all the schools. And in Bozeman, too, you're allowed to petition to go to the school that you want to go to, even though it's a neighborhood school and neighborhood children has first dibs. You're still allowed, if there's room, to go and to choose your school. So you don't only choose the magnet school, but you can choose the other schools too.
In the Bozeman school is an elementary school, meaning it's grades
K through
kindergarten
5.
through 5.
Mm-hmm.
And its initial focus was what?
The magnet school initial focus was science and technology.
So-
That was their focus, but their initial focus, same as we feel in Missoula, that it's more our approach to the curriculum rather than the content. We feel that we want a child-centered approach, an approach where every child is treated as an individual, the parents are involved, and that there's assessments instead of report cards, that we're all involved with making a portfolio and setting goals for the child, and the child meets goals. And the academic standards are the same in the magnet school as throughout the whole district. And then in Bozeman, the magnet school picked a science technology focus when they realized that funding came through that. And they also felt science and technology is a kind of a weak spot in public schools, and it'd be good to beef up that end. Though there was no lack of arts in that school. It was absolutely wonderful what we saw, in the halls, the artwork, and the enthusiasm of the children. You could tell they were creative. And they're creative not just with art, but with what they're doing with their schoolwork too.
We discovered when we visited there that that the principal we spent quite a bit of the day with, and also about an hour or so with the superintendent, and got to know and which we were very interested in, how the magnet school came to be about in Bozeman. And they were at a time of change in the district when the new superintendent was hired. And this was one of the things that came out of that time of change, was this idea of a magnet school. And they did decide on and I think that, I don't know exactly how that decision was made, but I know parents and teachers were involved for some time before the actual school was up and running. They did consider several different ideas that they might have for a content focus, a discipline focus, but they did decide on science and technology.
You mentioned it was a time of change, and that the school came into existence during that time. But let's get more specific. During this time of change, how did it come about? Was it a group of parents that came in together that decided that they wanted to bring this idea into existence, or who was there a driving force there within that community?
Our understanding was that at that point it was the school board that had identified the need for some new things to happen. and sought out a superintendent who would help that change happen. But I think there was people, there were teachers, there were parents all involved. But the driving force in Bozeman, my understanding and my memory is that it was the school board that drove that particular change.
And Claudia, did it draw teachers from throughout the district to that school?
Mm-hmm. The teachers were interviewed specifically to teach in that kind of a school. So if you had been interested in some other educational options than the prevalent methods, you could apply. And therefore, they ended up with incredibly committed teachers who had a similar philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And they went into that job knowing that it was going to be a tremendous amount of work, which these kinds of changes tend to be anyway. But they had a school that was partially condemned that they had to use, and of course they didn't use the condemned end of it, but they were working with very little, and in 3 years, by the time that we visited, had done amazing things with very little. And you know, being a science and technology school, you'd expect it to be filled with the latest high-tech equipment. They barely had a computer in every room. It was very similar to many schools in Missoula, except that they were trying very hard to make it a place where the curriculum really met the needs of the children, rather than having the children fit into the structure of the curriculum.
And I heard that the board was very involved. Dolores, do you think that that's an important element in Bozeman's success, that the board was involved?
They specifically chose the superintendent, and the superintendent chose the principal, and they did training. I think that in Missoula, when I was on the school board, we worked for a long time and made a mission statement, and so much of the mission statement that the board finally decided on included all of these kinds of ideas: to be a child-centered curriculum, to look at the individual children. And in that time, we put in place a lot of things that really honor children. We had a Care One program. We have a supported staff development. We have sent teachers on a variety of things. We had Mary Lou Gilroy, who was just recently here at the current conference that we just had from Roundup, and she presented learning styles and Gardner's multiple intelligences, and that was done while I was here. We have initiated tribes workshops for teachers, and all of these kinds of things are taking care of emotional literacy, how children feel about themselves and how they feel about other people is a big, important part of this.
So you're saying it's not that much of a leap
No, it isn't.
for our community to
And
go
it's-
from the way that the board has defined the purpose of the schools to this idea of a magnet
Yes,
here.
And we have continuous progress in some of our schools. We have conflict resolution. We have cooperative games in some of our schools. These are kinds of things that they were working on in Bozeman that were kind of the focal part of the school. The emotional aspect of the school was highly honored.
And I'm interested in what you said, Jean, about a magnet school starting but having a ripple effect on the other schools in the community. You mentioned, I think, one school saying, well, if they're going to be excellent in science and technology, we're going to be excellent in the arts.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned an international focus with a third school.
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Well, we would hope that in Missoula the same thing would happen, not exactly the same, but the ripple effect would occur, and that eventually a lot of the ideas that we have in the magnet school would spread to the other schools, and then we wouldn't need the magnet school anymore because the neighborhood schools would provide the choice in each school so that we would all feel we wouldn't have to bus our children or cart our children to a school.
Wait, have we got a call? We've got a call on line one. Hooray.
Courageous person.
What, do I hit line one, or I've forgotten?
Yes.
Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, I have a question for you. What type of training is required for the teachers or instructors in a program like this?
That's a very good question. Would you like to hold on in case you have a follow-up question?
Sure.
I would think that the same training that a regular teacher would have, except we are working with the workshop, like I said, in tribes, which teaches the emotional aspect to make teachers more aware of the feelings, And then I would go on to say learning styles and in the environment, the different aspects that a teacher has to be concerned with. She has to be concerned with the light and the sound and the temperature, and whether children want to work alone or work in pairs, or whether children want to have teacher and adult giving them gratification right away, whether they can wait, whether they need to eat. I mean, we instituted a breakfast program that made a big difference in some of our schools. Some of the children were hungry. You cannot possibly learn when you're hungry. And so things like that are all a part of a teacher's training. Not having a rigid set of rules and just teaching a curriculum, but being a facilitator of the child's learning.
Did that answer your question?
I guess a little bit. I know that sounds like there's other interests that the teachers need to be aware of. Are they not in the present school system faced with some of the training for those needs?
Yes, I believe they are.
Okay. So I guess at the bottom of this is there more training that's going to be required for these teachers?
Sure.
Yes, there is more training, and that's one of the aspects of Bozeman. First there was sharing, there was the cooperation between teachers. I think that was a very important thing, where there was a lot of teaming. In some cases there were teamings so that you had another person to talk about the children, another adult to work with. That was an important aspect. And then there was in-servicing. In fact, they brought a trainer in for Bozeman to help them with the social problems of first getting along, working in a room with another teacher. It's kind of like a marriage. You have to have a partnership, and so you have to learn how to do that on grade levels. And that's happening more and more across Missoula. We are working towards that, where at Lowell School the first grade are working together and the second grades are working together, and there's continuity between programs.
Does that worry you that there would be more training for those teachers?
Well, not specifically, but from everything I've heard so little about the education specifically. It's almost as if the environment is what's most important in this particular program, and less about what the material is that they'll be learning.
I'd like to speak to that just a bit. The district right now offers tremendous things for teachers. They have, in the last 10 years, just built up a wonderful program of bringing high-quality people, offering conferences and workshops, and sending people away to the coast and to different parts of Montana for conferences in all areas of progressive education. So, we are offered those kinds of things. Sometimes we pay for them ourselves, and sometimes the school district pays for them, but they're there. And it's a matter of choosing the ones that are appropriate, I think, at this point. If you're wanting to teach in a school that has a different structure, perhaps a multi-age or continuous progress school, you would have to choose certain kinds of things to attend. But they're out there and available, and often the district does foot the bill.
And many teachers have already had this training with their university educations. And it's not new to a lot of new teachers, or not so much new teachers, even teachers who've been in business for, who've been teaching for 20 years. An integrated curriculum, for instance, it sounds really complicated, but the difference being that one theme is picked for the curriculum and the subjects are taught through the theme, instead of having a social studies textbook and a math textbook and an English textbook and a reading textbook. There's a theme of whatever it is, Africa or colonists, and the reading is done through that theme. So they're hitting the subject from many different angles, and they're getting their academic skills through a theme, and it relates the information they're getting.
So if someone was taking literature or English or whatever the class might be, and their theme school, let's say, is Africa, what would their curriculum be?
Well, something that you brought up is that that you weren't hearing very much about the material that would be presented. As far as the curriculum guidelines in this school, that at least the way we envision it at this point, the curriculum guidelines would remain the same. The basic material would remain the same as it is in any other school. What might be different is that the approach to presenting that material might be different. For instance, rather than it being February and that's the month that everyone learns addition, or subtraction, it might be February, and some of the children are ready to learn addition and are working on that, and maybe some of the children have already learned addition and are going on to subtraction and are learning that, so that the curriculum is meeting those children right where they are, right where they're at. It's providing the material for that next step, rather than setting it out for all the children in a universal, general way. Does that help give you a little more idea? So
Yes, I'll let someone else call now.
well, thanks for calling.
Thank you very much for calling. All right, and we should tell people that it's very easy to call here. If you dial 542-6228, you'll be able to join this conversation. This is a community conversation, the first of a series on magnet schools, and on creating or bringing into existence a magnet school in Missoula. So we would like to welcome you to this conversation. If you're channel surfing, welcome. You haven't entered another time warp. This is Missoula Community Access Television, and this is the first in a series of discussions on a magnet school. So please call and please join our conversation. One of the other questions we started talking about before we went on the air was where we are at in Missoula right now, where we are with this idea. How far along are we with this idea?
Right with this phone call, I think.
I think we'll
Oh, you can hold on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get it in just a second.
Well, actually, it maybe to change a little bit of what we've said, this isn't really a brand new idea to Missoula. It's surfaced as an idea in the past, and some of us have heard about that. This particular effort started as more of a parent-driven group, though there have been increasing amount of teachers and administrators and community members getting involved. So I think that's of interest, that this is not something that has just hit Missoula in the last couple of years. It's been talked about really for several years in at different times, and it's come and for whatever reason it has not fully come to place.
And there's a sense of critical mass happening now.
I think so, and it's also possibly a time of change in the district too, which may be a similarity to what was happening in Bozeman.
Okay.
Maybe not exactly the same, and yet there's things happening. There's a budget, so they're being constrained. There's has been things like that, which make it seem like it's also a time of change here. We've had the unification. That was a big change in the area. So.
Well, I'm going to go and talk to this person on the phone, and
Good
then we'll
idea.
get back to that one.
Okay.
Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi. I have a couple of different questions, I guess, for you. The first one is this going to be like a private school within
Good question.
Missoula, or what's it going to be like?
Well, thank you for calling. Is it going to be a private school in Missoula?
No way. We feel that this type of choice should be available to all public school students without paying tuition.
So it'll be a part of the school district
It will
itself
be,
then?
yes, and have the same standards as the school district.
So, okay, so it'll be just like a neighborhood school, only it'll be maybe in a central location or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Very good
Is
question.
there going to be information sent out to
Gee, well,
school district or the kids?
funny you should ask.
This flyer should come home in the school children's packets this week. They're out in the schools now.
Oh, great. Okay, sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good night.
Yep.
All right, 2 calls. We did well. This is great.
Well, you asked earlier about a timeline. Where are we now? And we're at the point where we have presented this idea to the Curriculum Instruction Committee of the school board.
So you've already gone to the administration?
We've already
you mean?
gone to the administration and talked with them, and at the Curriculum Instruction Committee, they are working on getting a structure to study, I've had the words, to structure the magnet school, and it is our job in our committee to assess community interest. Because in order to have a magnet school here, in order to have this choice, those who are interested have to put their hands up and say, I'm interested. You know, we don't have a specific school and a specific thing to say it'll be at this school, this will happen and this will happen, but this is like initial interest, and people have to say, I'm interested, in order for us to go to the second step, which is for the board to consider it seriously. So we urge everyone to sign a petition or to come to a public meeting, which will be November 2nd at Sentinel High School cafeteria, or to call phone numbers. Paul's phone number is what, 721?
721-0265.
And Dolores's?
It's 549-2649.
Or mine, which is 721-5008. And we all have sign-up sheets by our phones, so if somebody calls, we can give you information, and if you feel ready or you want to see this at least being considered in the school system, we can put your name and your children's ages, or if you're a teacher, what grades you would like to teach, or if you're an administrator, if you're interested in being the principal.
So I heard you say two things. The first thing that a person can do is to sign one of these petitions of interest in
That's
the
right.
idea. And then second thing is that you can come to a meeting a week from tomorrow.
Thursday, right.
That's what, November?
November 2nd.
November 2nd.
7 o'clock.
It's Sentinel High School, 7 p.m. Okay,
I
great.
think it's important to also mention that you don't have to have children in the schools.
Yes.
My children are grown,
Right.
and I represent senior citizens.
Right.
And I think it's important that we are interested as senior citizens in the education of the children for the
Children
future. And so you
grandchildren.
don't have to have a child in the school to be interested in education. We pay taxes. We are supporting education in Missoula.
You still vote for board
And
members?
we vote, so I think it's important that anyone can call, not just parents with children in the schools.
That's right.
Do I have a call? I have a call.
All right.
Welcome.
Hello. I was wondering if the student-teacher ratio would be the same in the magnet school as it is in the present public schools?
Unfortunately, it would be. It would be great to have a 12 or a 15 student ratio, but we would have to have more money, and that's, the student-teacher ratio is the most crucial thing. And because
What is the student-teacher ratio?
It is 20 up to second grade. That's ideal. And in Missoula, we really try to keep that ratio. It does vary. There are pockets where it's way too high, especially in kindergarten. We are not really meeting the state standards when we have over 20, and that's really not correct. So the student ratio would have to be what was acceptable, but it would be what was financially possible as well.
The parents would be involved so that there would be more adults in the classroom, and that would help the individualization of the education.
And I think that's an important part of this whole magnet school, that you have parent interest, the
And
school
community members,
and
yeah.
community members, and it would be open for parents. The teachers that would choose that thinking that they would have parent help. They would have parents who are interested in coming into the classroom to assist children in all kinds of ways.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Do you have another one?
No?
Okay, thanks for calling.
Bye.
Good evening.
What would the playground be like?
That's a really, really good
Yeah.
question. Thanks for asking that question. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
The playground would have cooperative games and all kinds of wonderful things. It would have an outdoor education emphasis, I would hope. It would have a learning environment where children would be able to study natural plants and do archaeological digs that the class before had planted outside.
Yeah.
So it would be a place where there would be a garden for butterflies, and a place where birds can come, and maybe a place where a deer could come and eat something where they wouldn't be scolded for it, and rabbits too. So I think the outdoor education is a lacking aspect of our playgrounds. And I did support groups with Care One, and the most disastrous time was coming in from the playground where there were arguments and exclusion and fights and hard feelings. And I think that's something that we really have to work on, and that's part of that whole emotional thing of having the playground a happy place where you're included, where you can do cooperative games.
It sounds like you're talking about a more hands-on style of learning rather than an in-classroom style.
And so because the teacher-to-student ratio would have to remain the same, it would be the same as throughout the district, then parents and community members would need to help take up that involvement, that hands-on involvement.
So there wouldn't be any more teachers, there would be the
Couldn't
same
be.
amount of students in the regular classrooms in the
be.
regular schools,
Yep.
but the gap would be filled by parents, volunteers, and entering the school.
Well, and university
Sure.
affiliation, I think that's
Yeah.
an important one.
Yes.
Yes.
This would be a school that I think university students would want to
Would want to come.
come to and work in.
We have the Creative Pulse at the university, which is a nationally renowned program in the arts, and they are the ones who are leading the ways in a Master of Arts degrees, and they've trained a lot of people that are coming out of the university that are going to be really experts in learning styles. Howard Gardner is coming to Missoula, Montana, who did Frames of Mine next year, which is really an honor for Missoula to have.
He's coming as a speaker?
He's coming as a speaker for
Okay.
a week in the Genesis, which is really an honor for Montana to have.
So we're looking at university
Input.
instruction.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Have another caller. Good evening.
Yes, I have two quick questions. The first one is about the assessment of the students, and the second one is what is the minimum amount of students you feel you need to open up a new school, and if you don't obtain that level, what is your second option?
Very good questions. Do you want to hang on, make sure we answer them?
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you want me to talk about assessment?
Yes.
We've had 2 years where we have been working on assessment in District 1. Before I was off the board, we worked on assessment, and the assessment would be the same for all children in the district. We are moving towards criteria reference testing, which is you test what you teach. So there would still probably be standardized testing if that's what they choose, but we're moving away from that. And I don't know about the number of schools. We were thinking about 350, I thought.
We're thinking that the average school is probably 300 to 350, and we would want to fill a school. So, and what our second option is, if this doesn't go, I would imagine we would start pushing to have the choice in every neighborhood school. So that is a much more difficult thing to accomplish.
Did that answer your questions?
Just about the assessment. So in other words, is it the district itself that is moving away from the standardized? Did I understand that
Yes.
correctly?
Mhm. In the lower grades, yes. The district didn't feel they were really developmentally appropriate. They weren't testing the things. We are moving towards whole language that is doing writing for reading, inventive spelling in kindergarten and first grade, and they are not taking letters and punctuating them. We're not teaching skills isolated from real life situations. We're journaling, we're writing, we're combining reading and writing together. So the assessment is going to be more in a portfolio, and we're moving towards that, and that takes time to individually assess each of the children.
So then would my student, if we chose the magnet option, would you have grade levels? In other words, the first and second and so on, or?
There may or there may not be. Some of the continuous progress type schools have what are called multi-age classrooms, where what in the prevalent style of teaching would have separated first and second graders. In these classrooms, what would be first and second graders, would that be 7, 8, 9-year-olds, or 6, 7, 8-year-olds would be together. That's one approach. We can't say for sure what the details of this might be, because it's not for sure that this is going to happen. And the teachers would have to get together, the district would be a part of that, and the parents would all have to be part of exactly what do we want. What we're proposing is mainly is this continuous progress approach, and how that would be fulfilled would be, we don't know yet for sure.
Well, we know how they're doing it in Bozeman.
Well, and we
Yeah.
know how they're doing it at Lewis and Clark,
Lewis and
and
Clark,
we know
yes.
how they're
Yes.
doing it at Lowell. So we have some really fine models to look at.
Yes.
There's many different ways to approach this kind of education.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hello, a couple
good
be
question.
coming from? And another thing is, what's wrong with the public schools today?
Thanks.
Thank
You want to hang on?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thanks a lot. Where's the funding coming from?
Well, the funding would have to come from the same place that the funding is happening now. There would be no additional funds expected to come to the school. It would have to be within the what I guess is called a cost-neutral budget situation that we have right now.
So no increase in taxes?
No increase in taxes.
No
yeah.
tuition, right.
No
Yeah.
special funding at all.
No
for
special
the school.
funding, unless, again, we looked for funding outside of the district through grant writing, and that again ties into the appeal of maybe picking a specific discipline focus that we can appeal to organizations that are interested in supporting, for instance, like the Wilson School in Bozeman was picked the science and technology, and they found foundations and organizations that were interested in funding that kind of education. There are others that are interested in the arts or other areas like that. It may be to our advantage to help the whole district, for that matter, to pick a focus like that and find outside the district sources of funding.
So these children would already be going to school in the Missoula schools, and they'd already be funded in the Missoula schools, and they would just choose a different school at the same rate of taxes that are occurring now.
Well, it can be done in a staff neutral, money neutral situation. Bozeman started with the exact same amount of money that every other school received that year, and they did get funding eventually through grants, but they started out with the same monies that every other elementary school did. So, we have that as our inspiration that it can be done.
It's a really good question.
I think
it's important to realize that this is not criticizing the public
Yeah.
schools and not saying that there's anything wrong with the public schools. We support the public schools. The emphasis will be slightly different.
Mhm.
It will be more on not just language and logical mathematics, but it will be on the arts, it will be on spatial, it will be on music, it will be on interpersonal relations that will be added to that. And everything is changing so fast. The research on brain is changing so fast we can hardly keep up in what's going on with science and technology today to know. And so this would be kind of a demonstration laboratory where we would be able to, one, work with families. Families are changing, the needs of our culture are changing, and we would be very in tune with that. And the public school is too, but this would be people who are choosing to be there, and we'd have that advantage.
I from listening to you talk, I look at this as an agent of change within the Missoula system, that when you have one school that steps out and tries to define itself in a new way, it has that effect on the other schools that they want to define. They want a new identity or a different identity. And in an ideal situation, what you have is you have each school increasing its excellence or working towards a greater excellence.
There's also the reaching of a broader range of learning styles. The public schools now, and many classrooms reach a very broad, it depends on the teacher or it depends on the curriculum in that particular classroom. But in general, the prevalent style is a relatively narrow band of students are reached on a daily level and are really successful in the school. And there's those below that band and above that band that are reached marginally. And I see the school as teaching a more open-ended curriculum so that a broader band of learning styles, of intelligences, and developmental abilities are being reached. So if you're slow in one subject and way up there in another subject, you can be accommodated in one classroom.
And the reality is that our school district has already recognized this. They have allowed changes at several of the schools. They're allowing a lot of experimentation. One of the elementary schools has looping, which is having the same teacher more than 1 year in succession. They have allowed Lewis and Clark to have a continuous progress part of their school. They've allowed Lowell School to be I think it's completely continuous progress now. And so they're recognizing the need for changes. The problem is that those changes are in several schools, but not all schools in Missoula. And there are some other schools that have no options for the parents and children in that area. That's why we have decided that a magnet school is probably the best thing we can hope for now. The neighborhood schools don't seem to be changing as quickly as we might hope they would, and a magnet school is going to offer these options to everybody in Missoula.
And I think that answers the person's question about what's wrong with public schools. We're not here saying there's anything wrong. It's just that we're proposing this choice of availability to some things that are actually already going on in Bozeman, not too far away, and right here in Missoula, but are not currently available to children from the whole district. So it's not that anything's wrong. It's that this we feel it's time this choice was available for the entire district.
And remember, if you're just tuning in, if you've been switching channels and you've come to rest here, welcome. This is a community discussion on magnet schools, what a magnet school is in Missoula, what it could be. We are encouraging people to call. This is a call-in program, and you are welcome to join this discussion by calling 542-6228. You can join in this community discussion on magnet schools. How many people are already involved in talking about magnet schools?
It's a number that's growing, so we haven't got all those sheets in. But the original group was a pretty strong group of maybe a dozen families, and it just continued to grow. By May, there was like 50 or 60 families involved. Not actively, but the core group was still active, but the other showed their interest and wanted to be on lists and supportive. You know, if we needed some telephoning done, we knew we could call so-and-so to do telephoning or whatever. And now we've gained a lot of teacher support, much more than we expected. So the teachers know what we're talking about. It's not a foreign ground for them.
We have over 30 teachers that are interested.
Yeah. So that's more than enough
huge
teachers.
number of teachers.
Yeah.
Why would a teacher do that?
Yes.
Well, I know why I would do that. I'm
Why
not
you
sure
did do that.
Why I did do that. I just think there's a lot of people teaching in the public school system that know that there's a better and a more appropriate way to teach some children, and they'd like to try.
Mm-hmm. Even though it takes more work.
Mm-hmm, it does. It takes
a lot more work.
and
They
lots
feel like
of work, but it would be worth the commitment.
Mm-hmm.
How many teachers did you say?
Over 30.
Over 30.
So far. Mm-hmm.
There won't be 30 positions.
No, there won't.
So,
Unless a lot more parents decide to sign
Yeah.
their children up, and we have 2 or 3 schools. Then we'll just have it in every neighborhood and not have to worry about a magnet school right to start, which would be great.
You talked about having discussed this with the administration in School District 1. How have you done that? At school board meetings? Have you talked to over the phone with school board members? How familiar are they with this idea?
They know it's out here.
Well, that some have actually attended our meetings
Yes.
from the very
Yes.
beginning.
Yes.
2 or 3 of
Mhm.
the board members, current board members, have attended our meetings. And the curriculum and instruction meeting that we went to, almost all of the board members were present. And we did get a lot of good questions and feedback from them at that time. So they're very aware of the intent.
And they also know that it's not radical ideas. This
Mhm.
is not anything that's in the future, so to speak. It's already in place in a lot of school districts, and the school district is working towards this vision already. And this just may be a way of accelerating, implementing this type of education.
But right now, I heard you say that they're interested in some kind of threshold of interest among parents in District 1.
They haven't mentioned numbers, though.
They have.
And that's been pretty much our sense of it, that we need a school full.
Mhm.
So we're reaching out to parents to let them know what we're talking about, what kind of ideas we've been getting by visiting some of these schools. The Wilson school in Bozeman and by Lewis and Clark and Lowell here in Missoula. We've also been doing a lot of reading, and we have teachers and Dolores and other people who have quite a background in this style of education, this approach of education, who are bringing a lot of material for us to understand how it might happen. And so we're trying to do two things with parents who may not be educated about this approach. We're trying to explain what it is, but it's kind of funny because we don't know exactly what the school would be. It's kind
Sounds
of a
like
dilemma.
you're still open to parent input, too.
Most
that-
definitely.
Yeah.
Teacher input.
For this thing to really go, it's still a parent-driven committee, though teachers and administrators are becoming part of it. It's still a community, a whole community effort. And so it has to be something that we're suggesting, we're proposing, but it has to then encompass more and more people as they become involved. It has to encompass the needs of those folks as best as it can. So yeah, we need the people to become interested, to help us define what it is, what this school might be, and make it known so that either through signing up or by talking with the administration or school board members about their interest in this kind of a school in Missoula.
And it sounded like you're very open to having parents call you at home
Yes.
and talk to you about
Definitely.
this idea. And
Yep.
the meeting is a week from tomorrow.
We're-
It's Sentinel High School,
Yes.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
And these sign-up sheets.
Yes.
That if you are interested, we would like you to sign this sheet.
Yes.
I think it's important to say that Missoula has been so supportive of public education, that we have built so many buildings, and we have provided for our children. And this is just another step in caring about the children in Missoula. And we are so lucky. There was this terrible article in the paper today about gangs, and gangs coming in, and the children in Missoula, everyone is concerned about and are caring about, and we want to avoid those kind of situations by meeting their emotional needs as well as their academic needs.
Oh, good. I think there's a lot of potential for future discussions like this, using MCAT. That we could have some board members from the school board here to talk about this idea and other ideas, and perhaps we could have visitors from Bozeman who've seen the idea work in Bozeman come in and share their ideas and enthusiasm with us.
Yes.
So we have another caller.
Great.
Good evening.
What do you think your biggest obstacle is to accomplishing your goal?
Parents
Resist-
wanting it.
The biggest obstacle?
I think that if parents want it, we will get it.
Mhm.
Because this is democracy. Public education is democracy. So we need parents to want. It is their schools, the public. I was a board member. I was elected by the public. It's what the public wants, the public will have.
So I think my feeling is from talking with people that the community, as you mentioned in your introduction, the community is ripe for this thing. It's just, so our biggest obstacle is getting the information out so that people are aware that this effort is happening right now. And so we're doing every possible way of getting the information out that we can, including this forum right here, to get the information out, what we're proposing. And I'm confident that as this information gets out, that there is the interest here in the community to create this kind of a school.
And hopefully create it by next fall.
Yes.
Which we have, we need to get moving.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one thing, that when we went to visit Bozeman, they said, oh yeah, they could have waited for 1 or 2 more years, but you're never perfectly, maybe it's
No.
like having a baby, you're never perfectly ready. You just kind of have to jump in and start. And so I think, yeah, the fall of '96, that's still very reasonable, very sane possibility.
Well, I thank you all for joining me tonight. I know we're probably a little bit And we're not quite ready to wind down because we have another call,
Good.
I think. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, good evening. I think one of the ladies there just hit the nail right on the head when someone had previously asked what is wrong with our public schools, and she mentioned the word democracy. This is not a democracy, it's a republic. And if a teacher doesn't know that, we have big, big problems. But, excuse me, my question is, I've heard quite a number of code words tonight, and I have a challenge for you. Prove to me that this is not a variation of Goals 2000. And that's about all I have to ask of you.
All right.
What is your interpretation of Goals 2000?
Well, it's for excellence, and we are always interested in excellence. And so I'm afraid that I support Goals 2000, and I did support Goals 2000. I think that being concerned about all the aspects, it was not as realistic as it could be, because, for example, one of them that every child would be ready for school when they started, and we don't have control over making every child ready to come to school, because that's a parent's responsibility. We take what we get and we do the best we can do with it.
Let's take a step back. Some people might be watching that might not know what Goals 2000 is. So how do you define
I don't know what it is. I'm a parent and I'm learning as I go, and I've heard of Goals 2000, but I don't know what it is.
Well, it was established as the goals from the federal government that we were going to have specific things, like that everyone would be literate in math, etc., and they were unrealistic in many ways, because can we have a drug-free society? Will just say no really work to make a drug-free society? They were goals. They were not always possible. And
There
so
were a federal initiative
yes,
to establish universal goals.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there were many good things about them, but they were not really practical, and we worked towards it, but then it has been discredited because there were problems with it.
That question, as I heard it, had to do with are these goals for a Missoula Magnet school going to duplicate the
No.
Goals 2000 goals?
No, because there will be other goals that we will have. Going for excellence, yes, we will have high expectations. That's a very important thing of any school, is to have high expectations for the individual, which is very, very different than just high expectations. It's for the individual.
Mm-hmm. And how else will it be different?
Well, it should reflect the community, not necessarily reflect what the whole nation has as goals. It should reflect what the community has for the school.
So if that person has input on how he would improve the school, he should come and
You bet.
Yes,
testify.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Schools and the school board and everything can only do what they can based on what they're hearing from people.
All right, thank you. We have another call. Good evening.
Hello, I'm a high school educator of 30 years, and I think this program has nothing whatsoever to do with bettering education. I think these people should move their efforts towards bettering the public school system, which I think is great. The parents need to get more involved, and if you don't have that, you don't have the kid wanting to learn. So.
Okay, so that's your definition of improving the public schools, to have the parents involved. What else?
That's about it. Have them show up every day and have the parents give about the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Support the kid and support the teacher and support the idea of a learning environment.
That's all.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Are we ready? How close are we to wrapping this at 5 minutes?
I think that's a very important thing.
It is.
That's the crucial thing.
That is the crucial
is
thing.
having the parent involved with the child and respecting the teacher and supporting the teacher and being present and providing a time to do homework and being sure that the child is in school. Attendance is a very important thing, especially in the high school and in the middle school where children are not in school. It's very hard to continue a program when you don't have people present, and that's true also in the elementary school, that attendance is very important. and every parent can do what they can do. And this is a public school. I don't know if he understood. He said, support the public school. This does support the public school.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it's a vehicle for parent involvement as well. Like-
Definitely, yes. We need that, and we need that at all schools as much as possible. And I don't think this is in any way an alternative for non-involvement. If anything, it's asking for more involvement.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a team that educates our children. As I say, what is it, it takes a village to raise a child? The
Mhm.
same it takes at least a parent-teacher partnership to educate a child. Because parents know a lot of things about the children that teachers would never know. What motivates a child, what shuts down a child, where the child is, where the child's interests are. So that information given to a teacher, the teacher can use her or his child development and education tools to, as a team, to bring that child along. And then the child also will, if involved and engaged in the process, brings a lot towards his own or her own learning. And the goal of the education, as I see it, is to develop independent learners. Children are independent learners when they're born. Nobody tells them to learn how to talk or walk. It just happens because they have an awesome drive to learn within them. And we need to continue to encourage that independent learning because we know that they want to learn. It's satisfying to learn. It makes you feel good. It makes the children feel good. And if they have that sense of love of learning and they continue and use it, they will go much further than they would go if they, well, you have to learn your timetable by tonight. You know what I mean? That real strict skills motivation. The motivation has to be beyond the skills, and they will learn the skills happily.
What
And
kinds
there's
of
work involved. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but at least they're motivated and they want to do it, and they'll work.
Claudia, as you think about yourself teaching in a school like this, how would it change the day-to-day in your presence in the classroom? That's a tough question.
You know, as a kindergarten teacher, it wouldn't change my day much at all, even if I wasn't teaching at the 5-year-old, 6-year-old level, because I believe that the way that we teach in kindergarten, in an appropriate kindergarten, is the way that an appropriate K-5 school would be taught. So I'd probably have the easiest adjustment of all.
I already have parents in the classroom.
Yes, I have, probably 2 or 3 times as many parent volunteers as the other levels in school, and that doesn't have to do with parent apathy. It just has to do with lots of other things, but I'm pushy about it too. But I don't think it would change my life much.
Mm-hmm.
It would be an adjustment for those teachers that have been in a prevalent situation for years and years, I think. But I just slide right into it and enjoy
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
and watch it happen to the 7 and 8-year-olds, and know that I was sending them on to an appropriate situation.
Mm-hmm. Or if you had a kindergarten, 1st grade combination, you would change things. You'd have a broader range of skills to address.
That's true, yeah,
Mhm.
and that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
That challenge would be fun, but I would still teach it in a very similar way.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody, for joining us. It was really interesting for me, and I hope that we can do this again and bring some guests in as this idea moves along. Remember, if you're a parent and you're interested in this idea, please sign the interest sheet and please attend the meeting on November 2nd.
And along the bottom is a sign-up slip.
Thank you very much.